Chapter 46, Small Buddha Temple. Translator, CK Talon. Editor, CK Talon. Ding. In the underground Buddha City dungeon of the game, Zhou Wen slew countless Buddha heart lotuses before a Buddha heart lotus crystal dropped. He was somewhat disappointed. After spending the entire night grinding, with the dawn approaching, not a single Buddha heart lotus companion egg had dropped. The dimensional crystals he obtained were useless, with only the Buddha heart lotus crystal being of some use. Li Xuan hadn't informed Zhou Wen what primordial energy skill the Buddha heart lotus had. However, from the lotus seeds it shot out, it was likely a projectile-type primordial energy skill. Mortal stage primordial energy skills basically didn't have the ability to project their primordial energy outwards. This was limited to a small number even at the legendary stage. Even for a projectile-type primordial energy skill, only the use of a physical projectile could be used at the mortal stage. There was no way to condense the primordial energy into a projectile. Zhou Wen directly absorbed the Buddha heart lotus crystal, and quickly a strange force traveled from his phone into his body. The force of the Buddha heart lotus crystal was different from the crystals he had previously absorbed. Its force was extremely mild, like a spring's warm water infusing his body. It slowly flowed through his body before gushing into his heart. It strengthened his heart, making it beat with greater strength. Absorbed Buddha heart lotus crystal. Attained primordial energy crystal heart meditation, rank 7. Zhou Wen tried using heart meditation and found a warm stream flow out of his heart into every corner of his body. Other than giving him a warm and fuzzy feeling, there was nothing else. No wonder Li Xuan only said that Buddha heart lotus companion beasts are awesome, but he didn't mention the Buddha heart lotus's primordial energy skill. It's really useless. Zhou Wen didn't mind as he continued ordering the mutated skeleton ant to slay the Buddha heart lotuses. As he was having a great time killing them, he suddenly heard a boom. The pond water nearby spewed hundreds of feet high as a gargantuan Buddha heart lotus with petals having a sitting Buddha tore out of the water. Before the mutated skeleton ant could react, the blood-colored Buddha heart lotus had shot out more than 10 blood-colored lotus seeds at it. Knowing that the mutated skeleton ant wasn't afraid of the corrosion, Zhou Wen ordered it to rush forward against the torrent of seeds. When they struck the mutated skeleton ant, they blasted open, releasing the blood within. They flowed everywhere across its body but failed to deal any damage. The mutated skeleton ant dashed towards the blood-colored Buddha heart lotus, and when it was about 6 meters away, it leapt up, inward slashing its razor-sharp claws at the flower bud. Based on Zhou Wen's observations, the Buddha heart lotus itself wasn't very powerful. Even if it was a legendary stage creature, the mutated skeleton ant had a chance of cleaving off its bud based on the strength and talent skill it had. With the mutated skeleton ant right in front of the Buddha heart lotus suddenly spread its petals open like a bizarre mouth and devoured its aggressor. The petals then contracted, turning into a closed bud. Almost at the same time, Zhou Wen saw the system's notification of the mutated skeleton ant's death. Indeed, when the petals spread open again, the mutated skeleton ant was nowhere to be seen. There weren't any remnants of its bones. What a terrifying Buddha heart lotus. Zhou Wen couldn't help but sigh. Without the mutated skeleton ant, Zhou Wen lacked the ability to enter the lotus pond to attempt killing the Buddha heart lotus. Although his companion beast could be revived in-game, it could only be revived together with the blood-colored avatar. This also meant that when Zhou Wen revived the blood-colored avatar with a drop of blood, his companion beast would also revive. But as the blood-colored avatar was still alive, sending it to its death for nothing would be quite a waste. Looking at the map Li Xuan had given him, he controlled the blood-colored avatar and sent it to the restricted zone carved out by the military. Since death was required, he might as well visit to figure out the mystery. In the ancient, dark, and moist underground Buddha city, there were crumbling walls everywhere. There was also plenty of sand and gravel that tumbled across the ground. Zhou Wen saw a stone bridge when he approached the restricted zone on the map. Typical stone bridges had flowers, grass, birds, or beasts patterned on the bridge railings. But this bridge had several colored, flying fairies. They were in the form of young women as their clothes fluttered in the sky while they danced. It was a staggeringly beautiful sight. Comparing it to the map, Zhou Wen quickly confirmed that the restricted zone was just after the bridge. The soldiers had died mysteriously on the other side of the bridge. Zhou Wen was only gaming, so he naturally didn't have many apprehensions. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to step onto the bridge. He didn't discover anything abnormal, it seemed an extremely normal stone bridge. The blood-colored avatar easily crossed and arrived at the other side. Across the bridge, its original appearance could no longer be identified. Boulders filled both sides, leaving a narrow path among the rock that was enough for a single person's passage. There was a faint flickering of flames at the end of the rocky path. It was likely an illumination object such as a fire torch or oil lamp. Zhou Wen carefully observed the path but didn't discover anything abnormal. He then controlled the blood-colored avatar to walk in and head toward the light. The passage gradually headed up, and it was then that Zhou Wen realized that there were stone steps at his feet. However, due to the mud and rubble, the steps had been hidden. After walking for a while, he saw the stone steps exposed outside. He didn't encounter any danger despite walking hundreds of meters. However, he didn't let down his guard as he kept observing the stone walls and the steps beneath him. But nothing happened at all. Instead, the flaming light gradually turned clear. With it, he could barely make out a grandiose entrance. The entrance had a plaque that was rather old and damaged. The red paint had mostly faded and the text was already very blurry. At this distance, it was impossible to see what the words were. Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar to approach the entrance. Shortly after, he finally saw the words, Small Buddha Temple. What Small Buddha Temple? Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised. He had heard of Grand Buddha Temple, but he had never heard of Small Buddha Temple. While he was in thought, he suddenly saw the game screen turn black. Clearly, the blood-colored avatar had died. How did it die? He couldn't help but frown. He had been staring at the blood-colored avatar the entire time, but he didn't see how it had died. After dripping his blood to revive, he sent the blood-colored avatar to the underground Buddha city. He made the first stop at the lotus pond and spawned the blood-colored Buddha heart lotus, only to have the mutated skeleton ant killed again. The blood-colored avatar then headed to Small Buddha Temple, but it once again died mysteriously at the stone steps in front of the entrance. Zhou Wen had watched very carefully with widened eyes, but he failed to see how the blood-colored avatar had died under his nose. However, Zhou Wen shared the same feeling when the blood-colored avatar died. At that instant, he felt all his organs suddenly contract. Article 47 of 1597. Of course, this was the feeling the blood-colored avatar had given Zhou Wen. None of his organs really contracted. Strange. I didn't see any dimensional creatures appear. There wasn't even a strand of grass in the stone rifts. What could have caused the blood-colored avatar to die? It's no wonder the military are helpless. This place is indeed quite odd. Zhou Wen was thinking of trying another round at the Lotus Pond and Small Buddha Temple when he heard knocking on the door. Zhou Wen, are you up? Li Xuan's voice sounded. Only then did Zhou Wen realize that the sky had already lit up. He had unknowingly gamed for the entire night. Time passed way too quickly. It's unlocked, Zhou Wen said. Li Xuan pushed the door open and saw Zhou Wen gaming. Furthermore, he had dark circles under his eyes and his hair was disheveled. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Don't tell me you gamed the entire night. Tell me if there's something interesting. Otherwise don't disturb my sleep," Zhou Wen said as he put down his phone. He still planned on having a short nap. Sleep was a form of repose for him in the past, but now he found sleep torture. The feeling of sleep paralysis was terrible. Furthermore, he often heard devil-like murmurs that went on throughout the entire night. It was only because Zhou Wen was capable of completely focusing that he could ignore these soul-crushing murmurs and withstand the pressure. If any other person were to suffer such torture daily, they would probably have gone mad. Subconsciously, Zhou Wen didn't wish to sleep. It was also why he gamed with such obsession without realizing it. Sunset College's matriculation day is earlier than the average university. School will officially begin in a few days. If nothing surprising happens, we might have a chance to watch a good show play out after we matriculate, Li Xuan said with a chuckle. What good show? Zhou Wen asked. Li Xuan said mysteriously, I heard that many legendary stage students ranked in the top 20 of Sunset College have gone to the Lotus Pond, hoping to slay the gargantuan Buddha Heart Lotus, but not only have they failed, but some have even lost their legendary companion beasts. Now, they are all actively purchasing companion beasts capable of flight. We should be in time to watch a grand battle play out. Sunset College and the military have epic stage experts. Why don't they just mobilize them to vanquish that Buddha Heart Lotus? Zhou Wen asked, perplexed. If every problem is resolved, how are they to nurture the younger generation? The League has rules that reserve these resources for us, the future seedlings. Unless it's something special, the military or school will not interfere. Pausing, Li Xuan continued, I was planning on having breakfast with you, but looking at your present state, you probably want to have some more sleep. I'll have breakfast alone. After Li Xuan walked out, Zhou Wen slept. As always, he quickly fell asleep. The sleep paralysis happened once again as the devil-like murmurs kept sounding in his ears like a fly that he couldn't chase away. Zhou Wen ignored the discomfort and noise as he focused his mind on sleeping. However, he was unable to sleep as soundly as he used to. After about 5 hours of sleep, he was woken up by his phone ringing. He felt his mind a lot clearer. Fang Ruoxi. Zhou Wen saw the caller's number and was surprised that it was Fang Ruoxi. Zhou Wen, long time no see. I heard you applied to Sunset College. Is that true? Yes. Great. Fang Ruoxi seemed to exhale in relief. What do you mean? Zhou Wen didn't know what Fang Ruoxi was getting at. It's nothing. I still have something else to do. Bye. Fang Ruoxi's voice sounded a lot happier and she hung up after saying goodbye. She's crazy. Zhou Wen looked at his phone, having been rendered speechless. Just as he put his phone down, it rang again. This time it was Zhou Lingfeng. Dad. Zhou Wen picked up the call. Son, are you in Luang now? Yes. What's up? Zhou Wen had an ominous feeling. Little Lan wishes to treat you to a meal. Let's have a reunion, Zhou Lingfeng said with a smile. I'm having it pretty good over here. It's probably good over on your side, so there's no need to force a meeting, right? Zhou Wen said with a frown. No matter what you say, we will be a family in the future. It's only right to get to know one another. Besides, little Lan really wishes to meet you. Come have a meal on account of your dad. Zhou Lingfeng didn't show any intentions of giving up. Zhou Wen thought for a moment before saying, all right then. What's the time and place? It's not easy to find the place. Where are you? I'll get someone to pick you up. Zhou Wen gave an address. He didn't mention that it was Li Xuan's place and only said a nearby street's name. All right. Wait there. I'll get someone to pick you up. Zhou Lingfeng hung up once that was said. Zhou Wen didn't know when his ride would come. So all he could do was get out of bed, wash up, and head out. He got to the designated street and, when he saw no one, he crouched by the side of the road to game. This time, Zhou Wen didn't continue grinding at underground Buddha City. Instead, he chose the ant nest. He wanted to see if he now had a chance of killing the silver-winged flying ant. Before he found it, he heard the sound of a vehicle stopping beside him. It was a jeep. Zhou Wen saw a long snow-white leg extend out of the car when he looked up. Then, he saw a familiar face. And Jing. Not expecting Zhou Lingfeng to get in Jing to pick him up, he was somewhat taken aback. And Jing looked at Zhou Wen's phone and couldn't help but frown when she saw the game running on the screen. She then sized him up and coldly said, "You didn't cultivate the sun strafe art." "I was about to ask you. I asked my dad and he said he didn't give me the sun strafe art," Zhou Wen said to Jing as he controlled the blood-colored avatar to a safe corner before quitting the game. "I gave you the sun strafe art to harm you," Jing said with a cold expression before getting into the car. Without looking back, she asked, "Aren't you getting in?" Zhou Wen never expected Jing to be so direct. He was momentarily unsure if she was speaking the truth. However, since she was here and he had agreed to meet, there was naturally no reason for him to turn back. Zhou Wen pulled open the car door and sat at the passenger's seat. "I'm returning this to you." Zhou Wen handed over the USB disk with the sun strafe art. After cultivating the Lost Immortal Sutra, no other primordial energy art could work in his body. Regardless of its authenticity, it was already meaningless to him. Article 48 of 1597. Chapter 48, Stepmother. Light novel world. Driving forward without turning her head, Jing said, "I never take back things I give away. If you don't want it, you can delete it and throw it away." Zhou Wen placed the USB disk deeper into his pocket. It wasn't worth much, so there wasn't any need to return to Jing. Although he didn't know the veracity of the sun strafe art inside, it was just as Jing said, he could just delete it. The entire journey was silent, and soon they had reached their destination. Zhou Wen had found Li Xuan's villa extremely luxurious, but when he saw his destination, he realized what luxurious meant. It was like a garden itself. Jing drove the car past an elegant and beautiful garden. There was no lack of modern-style buildings, but they fused perfectly with the surrounding gardens. The contrast was perfectly balanced, clearly the work of a meticulous designer. In front of a 3-story building, Jing stopped the car and took Zhou Wen straight into the building by the main door. As he entered the foyer, he saw a mature, elegant woman sitting on the couch with Zhou Lingfeng. He sized up the woman and found her resembling the photo that Zhou Lingfeng had sent him. She was likely Ouyang Lan, but she looked more beautiful with a greater disposition in real life. She looked as though she was only in her 30s. "Hello, Auntie," Zhou Wen greeted. Firstly, he didn't wish to put Zhou Lingfeng in a difficult position. Secondly, he wanted to make it clear that he didn't treat her as his mother. "Little Wen, you're here. You look more handsome than your photographs. Your complexion just doesn't seem too good. We happen to have cooked some ginseng soup. You should have some later. It helps." Ouyang Lan stood up and pulled Zhou Wen's hand, bringing him to the couch. "Thank you, Auntie." Although Zhou Wen had low EQ, he wasn't foolish enough to reject Ouyang Lan's well-meant intentions. He just needed to prevent making it awkward for everyone. All he wanted to do was to finish this meal before returning to game. He wanted to see if he could kill that silver-winged flying ant. Ouyang Lan clearly was a person with very high EQ. Even though it was their first meeting, she made him very comfortable, as though they had known each other for ages. Zhou Wen originally imagined that Zhou Lingfeng was someone who had the gift of the gab, but when with Ouyang Lan, his father appeared somewhat wooden. It surprised Zhou Wen. "These are some fresh persimmons that were delivered earlier. Little Jing, you like them the most, so try them. They're sweet." When Ouyang Lan seemed to realize that she had given Jing the cold shoulder, she personally offered Jing a succulent, enticing persimmon. Jing took it, peeled it open and took a bite. It was really sweet. "Here, have another one." Seeing Jing finish eating it, Ouyang Lan offered her another one. Jing took the persimmon and deliberately shot a glance at Zhou Wen. Although she didn't say a word, he could read her mind. "That's what you call a real mother." Jing seemed to say because Ouyang Lan hadn't offered any persimmons to Zhou Wen, who sat beside her. Zhou Wen didn't mind. Ouyang Lan was Jing's mother to begin with. Doting on her was only normal, so there was no reason for him to be jealous. Furthermore, he had no plans on becoming a part of the family, so there was even less reason for him to mind. While Ouyang Lan and Zhou Wen were chatting, a butler came over and informed her, "Madam, the meal is ready. We've waited for so long. You must be hungry. Make sure you have plenty." Ouyang Lan pulled Zhou Wen into the dining room, making him sit beside her. Jing could only sit somewhere farther away. Upon seeing the table of dishes that were impeccable in smell and appearance, he realized that he had never seen some of the dishes. However, he was able to identify the huge lobster among them. Ever since the dimensional storms, most of the sea had turned into dimensional zones. The creatures in them mutated, so seafood had become much rarer. Lobsters were things that Joe Wen had only read about in history books, biological textbooks, and on the internet. He had never seen one in person before, much less eaten one. It was especially so in Guide City, which was landlocked. There was almost no chance of eating seafood, not to mention such a huge lobster. This lobster was delivered by air this morning. I prepared it myself. Little Jing loves such lobsters the most, Ouyang Lan said. As there was only one lobster, Zhou Wen imagined that Ouyang Lan had said so as a hint that he shouldn't fight in Jing for the lobster. When Jing heard that, she felt touched. Her icy look finally produced a smile as she looked provocatively at Zhou Wen again. However, the next second Ouyang Lan said with a wistful look, however, seafood like lobster cannot be eaten with persimmons or it will cause diarrhea. In serious cases, it might even cause food poisoning. And Jing has just had persimmons, so little Wen, you should have the lobster. Have a taste of my culinary skills. With that said, Ouyang Lan served the lobster to Zhou Wen. Instantly, Jing, who was prepared to take the lobster for herself, became petrified. Zhou Wen also wore a look of shock. It was deliberate, definitely deliberate. Zhou Wen was convinced that Ouyang Lan had deliberately made Jing eat persimmons. It was clearly a trap. It was no wonder Zhou Wen found it weird. With Ouyang Lan having such high EQ and there being so many persimmons on the plate, there was no way Jing could finish them alone, so why wouldn't the former offer him one? Is she really Jing's mother? As Zhou Wen looked at the elegant Ouyang Lan with her beautiful features, his mind filled with questions. Regardless, Ouyang Lan treated him very well. If one didn't know them, one would imagine that Ouyang Lan was Zhou Wen's real mother while Jing was the stepdaughter from her husband's previous marriage. Jing's expression fell, but it was obvious that she had been brought up well. No matter how aggrieved she was, she didn't stomp off in a fit. She waited until the end of the meal. However, her mood was rather terrible, leading her to have a poor appetite. Today, Zhou Wen acutely experienced what it meant to feel at home as a guest and the feeling of returning home. Even though he was slow and distant when it came to social relations, he had to accept that it was difficult to feel irked by Ouyang Lan. He even felt willing to deepen his relationship with her. Little Wen, I heard that you've been admitted into Sunset College. It must have been tough, right? It's not easy for foreign students to be admitted into Sunset College. I have nothing much I can offer you, so treat this as a meeting gift. After the meal, when Zhou Wen was preparing to bid farewell, Ouyang Lan handed a card to Zhou Wen. He originally imagined that it was a credit card or something similar. Just as he was about to decline it, he heard Ouyang Lan say, "This is a dormitory room card for Sunset College, the single room kind. I heard from Lingfeng that you enjoy some peace and quiet, so I got the principal to prepare one for you. After you matriculate, head to the dormitory according to the card number. You have to accept this tiny gift of mine. Don't make me feel that I didn't put too much thought into this present, alright? Thank you, Auntie. I like this gift a lot." Zhou Wen thought about it and accepted the gift. Since it was Ouyang Lan's gesture of goodwill, he wasn't willing to be antagonistic about it. A dormitory card wasn't much and a single room was indeed very useful for Zhou Wen. Ouyang Lan's gift increased Zhou Wen's impression and favorability of her. Even her gift left him feeling good. She was truly a thoughtful person. By the way, don't call me Auntie in the future. Am I that old? Just call me Sis Lan in the future, Ouyang Lan said with a faint smile. Zhou Wen could sense that she had enunciated the word auntie rather clearly, making it clear that she minded such an address. Article 49 of 1597. After leaving the Yin family, a chauffeur took Zhou Wen home. He didn't see Jing again. Why would Ouyang Lan deliberately try to win my favor? With the Yin family's power, there's no need for her to do so. Zhou Wen saw that the Yin family's compound had proper soldiers guarding it. This was a treatment few families in Luang enjoyed. He wasn't convinced that Ouyang Lan was simply trying to build better ties with him just because of Zhou Lingfeng. After all, Zhou Lingfeng left him to his own devices, so there was no need for her to do something as troublesome as this. Completely perplexed at this development, Zhou Wen decided not to vex over the matter. After all, he was just a poor kid and Ouyang Lan likely couldn't benefit much from him no matter how she schemed. After returning to Li Xuan's villa, he found it empty. Over the past few days, he seldom saw Li Xuan at home. Zhou Wen sat on the sofa and took out his phone to launch the Ant Nest dungeon once more. As he had only quit the game and the blood-colored avatar remained alive, there was no need for him to waste a drop of blood to enter the game. The blood-colored avatar appeared at the spot he had quit where there were a number of vigor ants crawling around him. Zhou Wen summoned the mutated vigor ant and got the blood-colored avatar to ride on it before storming off. The mutated vigor ant was just too powerful. Not even vigor ants posed a threat, even mutated vigor ants could be cleaved apart with one swipe. After leaving a wake of destruction and slaying a mutated vigor ant, Zhou Wen heard a notification sound. Originally imagining that a dimensional crystal had dropped, through observation he realized it was only a mutated vigor ant egg. Discovered mutated vigor ant. It has a compatibility score of 73% with the mutated skeleton ant. Proceed with fusion. Zhou Wen chose no because the last fusion hadn't brought about any excellent effects. He had no idea if a fusion might end up making the mutated skeleton ant weaker, therefore he chose not to. After choosing no, the mutated vigor ant egg automatically entered an incubation mode. In turn, Zhou Wen felt his primordial energy flow towards the companion egg. This time, the incubation was very successful without having his primordial energy drained. He took a look at his stats in-game and realized that he still had 2 primordial energy left. After the mutated vigor ant had finished incubating, it turned into an ant tattoo that appeared on the back of his right hand. Perhaps due to the mutated skeleton ant on his left hand, this new companion beast had chosen the right. Mutated vigor ant mortal. Strength 7. Speed 4. Constitution 7. Primordial energy 2. Talent skill Vigor Divine Fist rank 2. Companion form Boxing Glove. This mutated vigor ant stats are far worse than the first one. It's not of much use to me. Unfortunately, I can't take out things that drop in game. Otherwise, I could sell them for money. Zhou Wen felt a little depressed. Despite so, he was still happy that something had dropped. After all, this was rare to begin with. Due to having his primordial energy expended, Zhou Wen didn't head straight for the silver-winged flying ant. He first circled the region and killed large numbers of vigor ants using the primordial energy crystals that dropped to replenish his primordial energy. After refilling his primordial energy to 10, Zhou Wen headed for the spot where the silver-winged flying ant was. When he saw the silver-winged flying ant from far away, it flapped its wings and flew over, its speed so fast that it left behind after images on the screen. Without hesitation, Zhou Wen summoned the mutated vigor ant and made it deal with the nearby ordinary ant horde. As for the mutated skeleton ant, he had summoned it out as his companion form. Blood-red bones appeared on his left arm as though he had an exoskeleton. It enveloped his entire left arm, including his hand, turning into a fearsome bracer. The bracer could not only serve as protection, it even had quite a number of bone spikes that made it even more terrifying. Almost at the instant the bracer took form, he felt a force pump into his left arm, condensing its strength and making it more robust. He had the feeling that his single punch could blow through a mountain. The silver-winged flying ant arrived at the next instant. Its silver transparent wings rapidly flapped, streaking a curve across the air like a silver bolt of lightning. Its claw stabbed towards the blood-colored avatar's chest. Zhou Wen had fought the silver-winged flying ant multiple times, so he knew it very well. Upon seeing its actions, he knew where it was attacking. Without waiting for it to complete the attack, he took a sidestep and turned his body, using his left hand, which was protected by the bracer, to deliver an ashen palm strike. At this close distance, with ashen palm's explosive speed, Zhou Wen imagined that it was in the bag. To his surprise, silver streams of light shot out from above the silver-winged flying ant's 4 transparent wings. The silver-winged flying ant, which was already exceedingly fast, had its speed increased significantly. At such close proximity, Zhou Wen's ashen palm failed to keep up with his opponent's speed. He was just a sliver short of hitting its body. Instead, the silver-winged flying ant's claw directly stabbed into the blood-colored avatar's chest in that fluid motion. There was no chance for the latter to even struggle as it died on the spot. A flying-type primordial energy skill. Looking at the blackened screen, Zhou Wen was excited instead of being sad. The silver-winged flying ant had never used primordial energy skills before. However, he had managed to force it to use it, meaning that Zhou Wen felt that he had a chance of defeating it. After all, primordial energy skills required primordial energy. The silver-winged flying ant couldn't keep using it. As long as he figured out a way to stall for time, it wouldn't be impossible for him to slay it. Furthermore, since the silver-winged flying ant had a flight-type primordial energy skill, this was undoubtedly good news for him. They were relatively rare and were very useful. With something to look forward to, Zhou Wen worked even harder. He used a syringe to draw some blood and dripped it on his screen, reviving the blood-colored avatar and immediately sending it to battle. When he came in front of the silver-winged flying ant again, Zhou Wen lasted an additional 3 seconds. The third time he fought it, he used positioning and ashen palm that threatened the silver-winged flying ant, successfully dodging its use of the primordial energy skill twice. Zhou Wen exchanged the repeated deaths for combat experience as he slowly approached his goal of killing the silver-winged flying ant. Finally, he confirmed that the silver-winged flying ant could only use its primordial energy skill twice. This was its limit. As long as Zhou Wen could dodge the greatest threat twice, he would have the chance of defeating it. During his 7th encounter with the silver-winged flying ant, he successfully dodged the 2 critical instances and found an opportunity to deliver ashen palm, striking at the thin waist of the silver-winged flying ant. Article 50 of 1597. Translator, CK Talon Editor, CK Talon. The silver-winged flying ant's thin waist didn't snap. It didn't even show signs of being injured. However, after it flew several meters away, its waist suddenly seemed to bend. Its upper body drooped down as though it lacked the strength to prop it up. After staggering for a while, it collapsed to the ground due to a lack of balance. Zhou Wen was delighted to see this. He immediately controlled the blood-colored avatar to rush over to deliver another ashen palm strike, hitting the silver-winged flying ant's head. After this strike, Zhou Wen's primordial energy was completely drained. He was unable to use primordial energy skills again, but the effects of this strike were very evident. With the augmentation of the skeleton bracer and Ashen Palm's cold, explosive might, it blasted apart the silver-winged flying ant's head. Immediately, it began going in circles as it flapped its wings. Seeing it still alive, Zhou Wen threw a few more punches. However, without any primordial energy left, he was unable to use primordial energy skills. He relied only on his strength and the augmentation of the skeleton bracer. However, he only managed to leave the silver-winged flying ant tumbling around without dealing any serious injuries to it. However, the two Ashen Palm at full might were lethal. After the silver-winged flying ant slammed around randomly, it slowly stopped moving. Killed legendary creature, silver-winged flying ant. Discovered silver-winged flying ant companion egg. Zhou Wen was taken aback, having never expected a companion egg to drop. Although the chances of a companion egg dropping were significantly higher for legendary creatures, it was still a relatively low probability. To have a companion egg drop on his first kill of a silver-winged flying ant was sheer good luck. However, with this happening, Zhou Wen could only make a bet. A legendary companion egg required plenty of primordial energy during incubation. He wasn't necessarily capable of incubating the egg successfully. Zhou Wen's only advantage was to use the game character to incubate. Even if he failed, it only led to the game character's death and nothing to do with him. However, he didn't know if the companion egg would still exist in such circumstances. Can't this darn game have a backpack? Let me store the companion eggs or dimensional crystals that I pick up in an inventory instead of having to use them immediately. Zhou Wen's grumblings were in vain. He still got the blood-colored avatar to pick up the companion egg. Otherwise, the companion egg would no longer be there once the dungeon refreshed if his in-game character were to die. However, he didn't pick it up immediately. He did some grinding on the vigor ants and used the dropped primordial energy crystals to replenish his primordial energy. Only then did he pick up the silver-winged flying ant companion egg. Silver-winged flying ant and mutated skeleton ant have a compatibility score of 21%. Silver-winged flying ant and mutated vigor ant have a compatibility score of 11.1%. Proceed with fusion? They are all ants, so why is the compatibility so low? The system's notification left Zhou Wen speechless. Without having the intention to change his mind, Zhou Wen chose no before letting the companion egg enter the incubation mode. Zhou Wen felt all his meridians tremble vigorously as his primordial energy was instantly drained, leaving not one bit behind. He felt as though he was about to die. He felt a burning pain that seemed to come from an explosion across his back and couldn't help but spew out a mouthful of blood. Boom. Without any surprises, the blood-colored avatar in-game exploded to its death, turning the screen black. Indeed, even with a 10-valued primordial energy limit as a mortal, using that to incubate a legendary companion beast is still too demanding. Besides, the silver-winged flying ant isn't an ordinary legendary. Zhou Wen felt a little stifled. He had long steeled himself for the worst possible outcome, so he wasn't too disappointed. When he dripped a drop of blood and relaunched the game, he couldn't help but widen his eyes when he looked at the stats of the blood-colored avatar. The other stats hadn't changed, but in the companion beast entry there was an additional silver-winged flying ant. It actually managed to be incubated. Zhou Wen was overjoyed. He hadn't held any hope, so he was surprised to see the silver-winged flying ant appear in his companion beast entry. He hurriedly checked on the silver-winged flying ant stats. He was rather expectant of it. Other than having a slightly weaker constitution, it was unlikely to have any other weakness. More importantly, the silver-winged flying ant's body shape could perhaps be used as a mount. Also, with the silver-winged flying ant as a legendary companion beast capable of flight, he could now attempt to kill the blood-colored Buddha Heart Lotus. However, when Zhou Wen saw its stats, he was taken aback. He took quite some time to recover. Silver-winged flying ant, legendary, larva state. Legendary life providence, king of low altitudes. Talent skill, silver wing flash. Companion form, wings. Strength, 12. Speed, 14. Constitution, 10. Primordial energy, 11. Ignoring everything else, its stats were clearly too weak. Among legendary companion beasts, it was the weakest kind. It was even inferior to the skeleton general and could even be said to be much worse. The silver-winged flying ant shouldn't be this weak. Could it be because it couldn't finish the incubation? Does this larva state mean that it still has room for growth? Zhou Wen thought about it as he summoned the silver-winged flying ant. A silver glow appeared on the back of the blood-colored avatar before a silver flying ant flew out. The moment it appeared, Zhou Wen saw how different it was. This silver-winged flying ant he had incubated was at least half the size of the silver-winged flying ant he had killed. The silver-winged flying ant was bigger than a vigor ant to begin with and about the size of a mutated vigor ant. But now, it was only about half the size of a vigor ant. This size was definitely unsuitable for writing as it was just too small. Zhou Wen tried turning the silver-winged flying ant into its companion form and saw a silver light flash. 4 silver transparent wings appeared on the back of the blood-colored avatar. However, the wings looked a little too small, extremely disproportionate to the blood-colored avatar's size. It left Zhou Wen wondering whether such small wings could lift the blood-colored avatar. He made an attempt and the 4 silver wings actually managed to allow the blood-colored avatar to fly. The speed was not bad and allowed for nimble maneuvering. However, the wings didn't allow him to fly high. Its maximum height didn't surpass 20 meters. Zhou Wen then had a serious look at the silver-winged flying ant's life providences and talent skills introduction. King of low altitudes has tremendous air superiority but can only fly at low heights. A king when it comes to low altitude flight. Silver Wing Flash significantly boosts flying speed for a short period of time. Silver Wing Flash was as Zhou Wen expected. However, the legendary life providence title of King of Low Altitudes left him depressed. This creature couldn't fly high. From the looks of it, I can only count on the silver-winged flying ant maturing. Otherwise, with such stats, it's unlikely to hold much of an advantage over any legendary creature. I shouldn't even pin my hopes on it to kill the blood-colored Buddha Heart Lotus. I'm just curious what needs to be done to allow the silver-winged flying ant to mature, Zhou Wen thought. While Zhou Wen was pondering over the matter, the silver-winged flying ant's companion beast interface produced a system notification. Silver-winged flying ant is currently in a hungry state. Proceed with feeding. Article 51 of 1597.